about female need. And rather than just narrate the conversation, I do want to add some analysis and commentary, so let's get started. The original comment reads,
"Welfare and gynocentrism have been around since the beginning of time. Churches and lords would provide for the poor, sick, elderly in times of need. Getting rid of the welfare state will not end gynocentrism."
I respond, providing for widows and orphans doesn't do anything because the young women can't access the money themselves and thus continue to need men. He responds,
"What difference does it make whether they are young or old? The bottom line was men were not provided for nearly to the same extent that they contribute to society. Nothing has changed. Maybe there were not as much taxes, but there was not as much money in circulation either, or society-wide wealth either. The government just conscripted men into corvée labor to build shit. Men were obligated to marry women they had impregnated. The church and community also provided assistance to single mothers, even if it also meant severe chastisement for being whores. You tradcons have an obsession with taxes. Welfare can exist without government taxation. Traditionalism is welfare for women."
Now I want to stop there and insert a little bit of commentary before we move forward with the conversation. And I know he didn't do this, but something in his comment reminded me of this, and I just want to make this point real quick. So what they do is they say that I'm not pro-man, MGTOW should be pro-man, the men's rights movement is about being pro-man, and what they mean by pro-man is spending money on men. Like he makes this point about how welfare should be spent on men and women equally. The fact that more welfare goes to women is gynocentrism. So his solution is more welfare to men, more welfare for men, more spending on welfare for men. That's equality. Here is the problem. Taxes are paid by men. So you're taking from men to give to men. When you have two choices. And out of those two choices, no matter which one you do, the result is going to be the same. Then you go with the simplest choice. You go with the one requiring the least amount of effort. If the results are going to be the same regardless, why try? Why put in the extra effort to achieve no different result? So for example, in order to give more welfare to men, you have to take more taxes from men. So one group of men can only benefit at the expense of the other. You're going to hurt men over here to help men over here. So it's a complete wash. You're not benefiting men as a whole at all. You're actually hurting men just as much as you're helping them, and it's a wash. In the second option, you're just letting the men keep their money, and you're not giving it to men. So these men are hurt, these men aren't being hurt, it's a wash. So since both choices are a wash, one can only gain at the expense of the other, the correct choice is to do nothing, because it's the one that requires the least effort. It's the simplest choice. Why go through all the effort of creating a redistributive welfare program that doesn't benefit men, because you're just taking money from men to give to men? It would be better to just let the men keep their money. It wouldn't benefit the poor men, but it wouldn't hurt the rich men. And men would be no better or worse off. But the reason why these guys promote welfare for men is because they're on welfare. They're dependent on the government. They're not advocating for men, they're advocating for themselves. So here is my advice. If you are a poor, welfare-dependent man, instead of being on YouTube polluting comment sections trying to promote welfare, why don't you learn how to do something useful and get a fucking job? Stop trying to hurt men to hook yourself up in the name of men's rights. Fuck off. When women no longer are reliant on men for their survival, when they have some mechanism, some alternative to men, mostly the welfare state, which allows the government to provide for women's needs so they don't have to attach themselves to a man, when they have that alternative, they stop obeying men. And it's intuitive why. They no longer are reliant on men. There's no reason for them to continue to obey men. And his response to that is to show that governments throughout time, even before organized welfare, took care of women. And to that I say, sure, they took care of women because women are a resource. You need women to have children. Children are a resource for any tribe. Unless your tribe goes and converts people, it has to reproduce to grow. And if you're not having kids, the tribe next door is having kids, and their children are going to enslave your children unless you outbreed them. So you have to have women, and because women are the bottleneck of reproduction, you have to keep them protected. They can't protect themselves, they're weak. They're weak and vulnerable when they're pregnant and nursing and so forth. They have to be protected, just like a farmer protects his livestock. It's not because he worships the livestock and his whole life is devoted to the welfare of the livestock, but he needs the livestock to survive. So he takes care of them for his own benefit, not necessarily the benefit of the livestock. Alright, let's move forward. I respond, you don't see the obvious difference between taking care of old widows and young single mothers? He responds,
No.
with multiple question marks. Then he responds,
Is this a trick? Are you going to talk about something like promoting moral behavior? Either way, society has always rewarded women for making babies. That is the point. Women are rewarded for being women. That is gynocentrism.
Now, before I respond, gynocentrism has a very finite definition. When the desires and the perspective of the woman is the center of the society, that is when you have gynocentrism. Just because the women are being protected because they are a bottleneck and a resource for reproduction does not make the society or whatever gynocentric. For example, when ISIS goes in and murders all the men, like the Christians or whatever, and takes the women as sex slaves, is that gynocentrism? Well, they killed the men, but they didn't kill the women. They're only raping them and selling them as slaves. Well, clearly that's gynocentrism. No, retard, that's not gynocentrism. Raping and enslaving women is not gynocentric. True, they didn't get as bad as the men, but that's because the men are a threat. I mean, even if they're not like bred warriors, a man can actually defend himself, whereas a woman, unless she's very highly trained, she's gonna get her fucking ass kicked by a man, even an average man. But the women don't pose a threat, because women are weak, and they're also valuable, so of course they're being kept alive. That's not gynocentrism. He's too narrowly focused on just one aspect. If women get it better than the men in any way, it's gynocentrism, when that's clearly not what the word means. But anyway, I respond to his comment by focusing more on the whole single mothers versus the elderly thing, because that's the point I was trying to make. I respond, no, it's called fertility. Old ladies are unable to reproduce to keep the gravy train going. Single moms have as many kids as they need to in order to avoid getting a job. Don't get me wrong, I don't think old people deserve free money either for not dying, but giving old people money doesn't lead to an epidemic of bastard kids and accompanying violence, crime, and poverty. His response is
Lol. And women don't get married to avoid getting a job?
several question marks.
Men have always supported women, whether it was through tribal collective, the feudal collective, or the state and federal government. Ending welfare and taxation will change nothing. RBK talked about this years ago.
Now again, he's trying to change the subject. I'm not disputing that women are protected and provided for, but that in and of itself is not gynocentrism. In animals, the male addresses the threats, the female is protected. It's called mate guarding. You see it in almost all sexually dimorphic species where the male is the bigger and stronger sex. That's not gynocentrism. The male is not living his life for the female. He's keeping the females around to benefit himself. He's not sacrificing his life for random women or in the name of women. He's protecting his mate, his tribe, because those children grow his power. Just like the farmer raises the cattle so that he can get the milk and the meat. Anyway, I respond, I'm not talking about women being independent. Women will always be dependent on men. I'm talking about ending gynocentrism, taking their rights away, and treating them like the disabled children they are. So his response is,
Why will women always be dependent on men? You sound insecure. Children are a burden, why not just thrust true equality on them?
and so I give the rational, obvious answer of because they will die and humanity will go extinct as a result. And his response is,
Why does it take you tradcon so long to get to the point? For someone obsessed with survival of the fittest, you seem preoccupied with women's survival. Gynocentrism is preventing human evolution, but not for the reasons you think.
And that's when I tell him I'm going to do a video about this, because to explain how fucking retarded he is cannot be contained in a single comment section. This guy is fucking delusional, and he's dangerous. This is like an extremist egalitarian. I bet you didn't know that egalitarians could be extremists. You probably thought they were like middle-of-the-road, squishy moderates. But no, here we have an extremist egalitarian who's willing to cause the extinction of humanity in order to prove his point, which flies in complete opposition to all observable evidence. Now, I covered this in an older video called Magical Thinking and Male Power, about this exact point. Because these egalitarians believe that if you just force women, put them in a situation where they have to assume responsibility, where they have to be equal to men, women will just step up. Women will just magically overcome their sexual dimorphism disadvantages and become equally capable in all things to men. and all you have to do is threaten them with death, and it'll just magically happen. And if most of the women die, so what? Then humanity deserves to die. Or humanity deserves to almost go extinct. And then we'll just breed with the few women that are left that magically mutated like the fucking X-Men. You think in your fucking retarded minds that women are just pretending to be incapable. And yet when they're put in situations where they have every single incentive to drop the act and be capable, they can't. I use the example of a reality show with $1 million on the line or whatever the fuck the reward was for whoever won the show. They had every incentive. They had money dangled in front of their face, and you know how much women love money. All they had to do was drop the act and be capable, and they couldn't. Because it's not a fucking act. Now you may think, oh, reality TV is scripted, that's a bunch of bullshit, those women were in on it, whatever. What about the story of the woman who started an all-women business? She put her own money on the line. She risked her reputation, her credit, to found this all-women's company so that women could be strong and independent and all this other bullshit. And it went down in fucking flames. And all the women who worked there got fired. They all lost. And there was no TV show to document it. These women just went out, risked everything, and then they got fucked. They got fucked by their own incompetence and inability to step up because they're women. This is the rule. Women cannot be equally capable as men. And when you force them into a situation where they have to be, they will fail. And if it's a life or death situation, they will die. And if you don't have women, you don't have children, you don't have humans. And that's how far these fucking extremist egalitarians are willing to take it. They want to force women into a situation where they have no hope of success. Thinking it's like fucking X-Men, that they're gonna mutate and develop superpowers. Stop reading X-Men comics and crack open a biology book once in a while. If you want to prove your point that women are in on this massive conspiracy to pretend to be incapable, but they really are secretly equal to men if men would just force them to take responsibility, then please point to any example in history, just one example in history. Show me the matriarchal society that isn't a primitive shithole. Show me the women who performed equally to the level of men in a situation that was life and death. Just show me one example. Now, if you can't produce one example, because I know you can't, they don't exist, but to believe in something in spite of all observable evidence is magical thinking, and it's what retards do. It's what zealots and extremists do when all the facts are against them, but they just believe in the retarded bullshit anyway. You're just a big fucking dipshit. And the fact that you are advocating for the extinction of humanity makes you a dangerous dipshit. So I hope you enjoyed this dramatic reading of the comment thread. This is Turd Flinging Monkey. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.